In the last lesson, we added video ads to our channel to monetize our content. Publishers can also monetize content by offering monthly and annual subscriptions and one-time purchases such as movie rentals and pay-per-views, all directly on device through Roku Pay. Roku Pay is Roku's proprietary payment platform. It provides a complete payment experience featuring a low-friction sign-up flow and end-to-end payment process. With Roku Pay, processing costs, international currency conversions, and tax withholdings are automatically handled for channels. Customers can subscribe to channels right from their TVs with just a few presses on their Roku remote control while managing their subscriptions on and off device. And for developers, Roku Pay includes a SceneGraph channel store component that makes implementation fast and easy. The channel store contains an entire suite of APIs for getting subscription products from the channel's catalog, pre-populating dialogues with customers' user information, purchasing products, and managing access to content. In addition, Roku Pay includes a RESTful API that you can integrate into your backend system for validating, refunding, and canceling subscriptions. In this lesson, you'll learn how to get started with Roku Pay, including how to create a channel, in-channel products, and test users who can make in-channel purchases free of charge for testing purposes. Implement the Roku Pay workflow from checking entitlements to completing purchases and granting access to content, and integrate the channel store component. We'll update the channel using the channel store API so that pressing the play button checks whether you're entitled to the content in the channel, and then offering a free trial subscription in case you're not. To get started with your Roku Pay integration, you first need to review a few documents and then configure your development environment for testing. To begin, read the certification requirements related to purchasing. The most important thing to note is that Roku Pay is required for handling on-device payment transactions. Channels offering subscriptions and other transactional content must integrate Roku Pay. In addition, subscription channels must authenticate customers on device. Sign-up and sign-in workflows must be completed entirely on the Roku device without requiring customers to visit an external web page. This makes it easy for customers to subscribe to channels and access content, and it reduces churn for channels. The channel store component includes APIs for getting the customer's existing purchases and getting their email address and other Roku account information, which minimizes or completely eliminates the need for customers to enter any information when subscribing or launching channels. This helps ensure customers complete their purchases on your channel and get to content faster. We'll review the Roku Pay workflow in the next section. You can also check out the on-device authentication guide for more information. Also, take a look at the channel store node and Roku web service documentation. These documents detail the APIs used to manage Roku Pay integrations. Once you're ready to integrate Roku Pay and on-device authentication, you need to create a channel and configure it and your development account for testing. So log in to the developer dashboard with your Roku developer account credentials, and the first thing we're going to do is create a test channel. So click Manage My Channels, click Add Channel, select Developer SDK, mark the channel as non-certified, and then enter a channel name. For this example, I'll name the channel Roku Pay Demo. Next, select Monetization from the drop-down list. Select the My Channel Contains In-Channel Subscriptions checkbox, and then click Save. Note that we're configuring this test channel for the bare minimum needed to test the Roku Pay implementation. We'll review all the requirements for publishing channels to the Roku Channel Store in a later lesson. Now, let's go back to the Manage My Channels page and enable our test channel for billing testing. To do this, select Options and click Use for Billing Testing. We can now use the in-channel products that we're going to create next to test the Roku Pay implementation without generating any charges. And finally, click Yes in the confirmation dialog. Next, we're going to create a few in-channel products. I'm going to create 2 subscription products to test our updated channel, 1 trial product and 1 paid. So select Manage in-channel products from the drop-down list, click Add a new product, and then we're going to select the Roku Pay test channel that we just created and create monthly trial and monthly paid products. So the product name is what is displayed to customers in the on-device sign-up workflow and the off-device My Subscriptions page. Therefore, enter a descriptive name that makes it easy for customers to identify your product. The product ID is your SKU number or other internal identifier for the product. Now we can make this a monthly or annual subscription, and then we'll set the price of the subscription product using one of the predefined tiers. Essentially, the 3-digit tier numbers are used for 99-cent pricing and correspond to the dollar amount. For example, Tier 1 is 99 cents, Tier 2 is $1.99, Tier 10 is $9.99, and so on. The 4-digit tiers are used for 49-cent pricing. Finally, we can make a trial subscription and set the length of the trial. And you can repeat this for each subscription product you plan on offering in your channel. The next thing we need to do is add a test user. So select Manage Test Users from the drop-down list. Test users can purchase in-channel products on development channels without generating charges. So let's now enter the email address linked to your Roku account and then select the Roku Pay test channel and then click Add. So now we can use our in-channel subscription products to test our channel after we implement Roku Pay in it. Before moving on to the next section, let's get the Web Service API key needed to make calls to the Roku Web Service API. Now note, we won't be making any Web Service API calls in this lesson. However, the Web Service APIs are an integral part of the Roku Pay implementation. The Roku Web Service includes REST endpoints that you can integrate into your backend system for pulling transaction data. For example, the Validate Transaction API is typically used to check whether customers are entitled to content purchased through Roku Pay in a channel. Overall, the Roku Web Service includes APIs for validating, refunding, and canceling subscriptions, updating billing cycles, issuing service credits, and validating refunds. To get your web service key, select Web API Settings from the drop-down list and securely record the displayed key. As part of your backend integration, you can also subscribe to push notifications to deliver transaction data to your service endpoint. Video on-demand channels that monetize content through subscriptions are referred to as SVOD channels. The Roku Pay workflow for an SVOD channel typically entails verifying on-device whether customers have access to content by validating their previous purchases. For production channels, this involves getting the transaction ID returned from a Get Purchases channel store API call, passing it into the Validate Transaction Roku Web Service API call, and verifying that the isEntitled flag is set to true. If the isEntitled flag is set to true, a refresh token is stored in the device registry and in the Roku cloud. Storing an access token in the cloud enables customers to access the content in an SVOD channel on a different Roku device that is linked to their same Roku account. Now, if the customer does not have a subscription, the channel store APIs are used to list the subscription products available for purchase, order the subscription, and verify that the purchase was completed. Once the purchase has been verified, the customer is granted access to content. On a production channel, the purchase is verified by again getting its transaction ID and passing it into a Validate Transaction Roku Web Service API call and making sure isEntitled is set to true. In addition, a new user account is automatically created and stored in the backend with a validated transaction ID and the customer's email address, name, and user ID. Finally, a new access token is generated in your system and stored in the device registry and in the Roku cloud. In the next section, we're going to use the Channel Store Nodes API to verify access to content and manage subscription purchases. Our channel is not connected to a backend server. Therefore, no Roku Web Service API calls that you would normally make on a production channel are executed, and we're not retrieving or storing access tokens. We'll verify existing subscriptions by checking their expiration dates returned by the Channel Store Get Purchases API and verify subscription purchases by checking that the channel store's Do Order API returns a successful response. Check out the on-device authentication guide for the required implementation for production SVOD channels. You can also download the on-device authentication sample channel, which includes sample entitlement and token endpoints, to see the workflow when it includes the back-end web service calls. We're now going to implement Roku Pay in our channel. We'll use the channel store component to verify access to content and manage subscription purchases. Specifically, we'll use the Get Purchases command to list the subscriptions associated with our Roku account and check their expiration dates. If we have a valid subscription, pressing the play button launches content into playback. If we don't have a subscription, we'll use the Get Catalog command to list the subscription products available for purchase. When a subscription product is selected, we'll send a Do Order command with a product code and name that we specified when we created the in-channel product. Once we've verified the purchase in the confirmation dialog, we'll check that the Do Order command returns a successful response and then allow content to be played. So the first thing we're going to do is clone the previous example. So let's copy the video ads example, paste it, and rename it Subscriptions. Now let's expand the Subscriptions folder, expand the Components folder, and then open the main scene XML file. We need to add the channel store node and link its business logic to the main scene. So let's add a script element that points to the subscription logic BrightScript file that we'll create in a moment. And then let's save the file and open the main scene BrightScript file. To implement Roku Pay in our channel, we need to add a channel store object to the global node. So let's use the ROSJNode's add field method to add a channel store field to the global node. This method takes the name of the object being added, the type of object, which is a node, and a flag indicating whether an observer is called when the object is updated, which we'll set to false. And then we'll create a channel store and set the channel store field to it. And we're updating this file, so let's save it. Now let's go expand the UI logic folder and open the detail screen logic BrightScript file. So instead of opening the video screen when the play button is pressed in the detail screen, we need to call the check subscription and start playback method, which we'll create in the next section. So scroll to this line, which handles playback from the series detail screen, and change the name of the method from show video screen to check subscription and start playback. And we'll make the same change here where the detail screen is used for launching movies, short form videos, and episodes. And now we're done updating the file, so let's save it. Let's implement Roku Pay in our channel. So the first thing to do is open a new file in your text editor or IDE and create the check subscription and start playback method. As the name implies, it checks whether the user has a subscription before launching content to playback when a video is selected. It takes three parameters: the content node with a row of content containing the selected video, an integer representing the index of the currently selected video, and a flag indicating whether the row of content is under the series category, which is set to false by default. And then we store the attributes passed into the method in a series of component variables. We store the row content in an m.rowContent variable, the selected item in an m.rowSelectedItem variable, and the isSeries flag in an m.isSeries variable. And then we call the run subscription flow method. This method gets the user's purchases. First, we create an m.isProduct with expired trial flag that we'll use to offer a paid subscription if the trial product has been used, and we'll set this flag to false. Then we'll display a dialog telling the user that we're checking for active subscriptions. To do this, we create a progress dialog node and store it in a dialog check sub reference variable. The progress dialog includes a title and a spinning icon, a busy spinner node, as the body of the dialog. And then we set the title of the progress dialog to checking subscriptions. Finally, we show the dialog by setting it to the interface field of the main scene. Specifically, we set the progress dialog to the dialog of the main scene, which is represented by the m.top.dialog object reference. Next, we'll get the user's existing subscription purchases. So we call the channel store.getPurchases command. To send a command, you set the channel store's command field to the string representing the action to be taken. Calling the getPurchases command causes the channel store's purchases field to be sent to a content node containing the results of the command. The purchases content node contains a child content node for each purchase. And then we create an observer to monitor the purchases content node. When the purchases node is loaded with subscription products, the onGetPurchases handler, which we'll create next, is called. The onGetPurchases method extracts the subscription products returned by the getPurchases command and checks whether they're still active. If there's an active subscription, the selected video is launched into playback. If there's not, we'll display subscription products available for purchase in the channel. So this method takes an event, and before we start implementing any business logic, let's stop observing the purchases field. To do this, we pass the purchases content node into the ROSJ node's unobserved method. This prevents this handler from being called any further if the purchases node is updated. And let's use the events getData method to get the subscription purchases in the purchases content node. Next, we'll check if the progress dialog is still open. So let's verify that the m.top dialog is invalid. And if not, we'll close the progress dialog by setting its close field to true. If the dialog is closed, we'll just return from this if-else statement. Then we'll verify that the purchases content node has subscriptions, which are each stored in a child content node. So let's check whether the purchases getChildCount method is greater than 0. If there are subscriptions, let's call the purchases getChildren method and get all the subscription child nodes by passing -1 as the number of nodes to be retrieved and the 0 index in the playlist as the starting position. We'll store the array of subscription child nodes in an all-purchases variable. Next, we're going to check the expiration dates of the subscriptions. So let's get the current date and time by creating an RODateTime object and storing it in a datetime variable. And convert the time to Unix epoch format and store it in a uTimeNow variable. Now let's iterate through the purchase subscriptions and compare their expiration dates to the current time. So for each subscription purchase content node in the all purchases array, let's convert the subscription's expiration date field to an ISO 8601 string using the datetime node. And then convert that to Unix epoch format and store it in a uTimeExpire variable. If the subscription's uTimeExpire is greater than the current time in the uTimeNow variable, the subscription is valid. So we'll call the showVideoScreen method that we updated in the last lesson with a row of content, index of the selected video, and the isSeries flag, which launches the video into playback. If the subscription's uTimeExpire is less than the current time in the uTimeNow variable, the subscription has expired. So we'll check whether the expired subscription was a trial product. We'll do this by checking whether the subscription's trial quantity field is greater than 0. This field corresponds to the number of days or months specified for a trial product in the in-channel products page. If the trial quantity field is greater than 0, we'll set an m.isProduct with expired trial flag to true. We'll use this flag in a bit to list the non-trial products in our catalog. Now, if the getChildCount method was 0, meaning that we don't have any subscriptions, we need to show the in-channel subscription products that are available for purchase. So first, let's display a dialog telling the user that we're getting the subscription products. To do this, we'll create a progress dialog node and store it in a dialog check products reference variable. And then we set the title of the progress dialog to retrieving available products, and then show the dialog by setting dialog check products to the m.top.dialog variable. Next, we'll get the subscription products in our catalog. So we call the channel store.getCatalog command. This causes the channel store's catalog field to be set to a content node containing the results of the command. The catalog content node contains a child content node for each product. And then we create an observer to monitor the catalog content node. When the catalog node is loaded with subscription products, the onGetCatalog handler, which we'll create next, is called. The onGetCatalog method lists the subscription products returned by the getCatalog command. So this method takes an event, and again, before we start implementing any business logic, let's stop observing the catalog field. And then we'll use the events getData method to get the catalog and store it in a catalog variable. And again, we'll check if the previous retrieving available products progress dialog is still open. Next, let's verify that the catalog content node has subscription products, which are each stored in a child content node. So let's check whether the catalog's getChildCount method is greater than 0. If there are subscription products, let's create another progress dialog. We'll set its title to subscriptions and display a please select subscription type message. And then add buttons for each subscription product in the catalog. So let's create an empty subscriptions array and create an empty m.active catalog items array. And then we'll loop through all the subscription product child nodes returned by the catalog node's getChildren method. And if the isProduct with expired trial flag is true, let's make sure the subscription product is not a trial offer by checking that its trial quantity field is 0. If so, we'll push the name and cost fields of the product child node onto the subscriptions array. And we'll push the product code and product name key value pairs onto the m.active catalog items array. Now, if the trial quantity field for the subscription product is greater than 0, meaning that the trial product has not been used yet, we'll push the name and cost fields of the product child node onto the subscriptions array and push the product code and product name key value pairs onto the m.active catalog items array. Then we'll set the buttons in the subscription dialog to the subscriptions array. As a result, the dialog will have a button for each subscription product in the catalog. And then we create an observer to monitor the subscriptions dialog's button selected field. When a button for a subscription product is pressed, the doSubscriptionOrder handler, which we'll create next, is called. Now, if the catalog's getChildCount method is set to 0, meaning there are no subscription products in the catalog, we'll display an error dialog. So to create the error dialog, we set the dialog's title field to error and display a there are no available subscriptions message. And now let's display either the subscriptions or error dialog by setting the m.top.dialog variable to the dialog variable. The doSubscriptionOrder method completes the purchase of the subscription product that was selected in the subscriptions dialog. So this method takes an event, and let's get the index of the button that was selected in the subscriptions dialog, which is stored in the button selected field, and set it to a button selected index variable. And pass the index into the m.active catalog items array to get the product code and product name key value pairs associated with the selected subscription product. Let's store the retrieved subscription product in a catalog item variable. Now let's create an order for the selected subscription product. To create an order, you need a content node that contains a child content node for the item being purchased. The child content node must have its code field set to the code of the corresponding in-channel product. This is the code that we previously specified for the product in the developer dashboard. Also, its quantity field must be set, which is typically 1. So let's create a content node named order, and then create a child content node and set it to a product content node. So to specify the product being ordered, let's use the addFields method to add product code and name associative arrays to the product child content node. Now that our order content node has a child product content node with its code and quantity fields populated, let's create the order using the channel store's doOrder command. So let's set the channel store's order field to the order content node, set the channel store's command field to doOrder. Once the customer approves the purchase, the channel store's order status field is set to a content node containing information about the completed order. The content node will have a child content node for the item purchased. And finally, create an observer to monitor the order status field. When the status of an order changes, the onOrderStatus handler, which we'll create next, is called. The onOrderStatus method verifies that the purchase of the subscription product has been completed and then starts video playback. So this method takes an event and it gets the order status content node that generated the event and stores it in an order status variable. If the order status content node is not valid and its success field is set to 1, we'll call the showVideoScreen method with a row of content, index of the selected video, and the isSeries flag, which launches the video into playback. If the success field is not 1 because the order was canceled or an error occurred, we'll display an error dialog. And we do this much like before by creating a dialog node, setting its title to error, setting a failed to process payment message, and then setting the m.top.dialog to this dialog. Finally, we pass the order status content node into the ROSJ node's unobserved method to stop handling any further changes to the order status. And that's it. We're done with this file. So let's save it in the UI logic folder and name it subscriptionlogic.brs. And now we are ready to test our Roku Pay implementation. Okay, let's test the channel on your Roku device by sideloading it. So let's archive the contents in the subscriptions folder and use the development application installer to load it. You can see that now when we press play to launch a video, the channel checks for a valid subscription. If there is one, playback starts as usual. However, if we don't have a subscription, the subscription dialog opens with a list of buttons for the different subscription products in the catalog that we can purchase. When we order a product and confirm the purchase, video playback begins. If we cancel the order, an error dialog is displayed. Thank you so much for watching this video. For more Roku developer videos, subscribe to our channel. And for the rest of the videos in this course, as well as additional demos and tutorials showing you how to develop on one of the world's leading streaming platforms, check out the link to the Roku Developers video site in the description below.